Hi, and welcome to episode 56 of Toke Signals TV, where we bring you the biggest in cannabis and hemp news stories every week. I'm Steve Elliott, the editor at tokesignals.com, and I'll be guiding you through the news. First of all, let's look at our bud pick of the week. We have a 60% indica flower for you this week. It's called Starfighter, and it is an exotic mix of Tahoe Alien and Lemon Alien Dog. As you can see, it's quite nice to look at as well. Let's do the news now, shall we? In the United States this week, an important study found that less domestic violence occurs among married couples who smoke marijuana. New findings from a study of 634 couples have found that the more often they smoke marijuana, the less likely they were to engage in domestic violence. The study's big sample size and the 9-year length of the study make it a significant finding. Researchers hypothesized that the positive effects of using cannabis may actually help reduce conflict and aggression. The findings were strong even after controlling for things like demographics, behavioral problems, and alcohol use. The study, which was conducted by researchers at the University of Buffalo School of Public Health and Health Professions, along with the university's Research Institute on Addictions, appeared in the August online edition of Psychology of Addictive Behaviors. Looking at couples over the first 9 years of marriage, the study, Couples' Marijuana Use is Inversely Related to Their Intimate Partner Violence over the first 9 years of marriage, found that more frequent cannabis use by husbands and wives, 2 to 3 times or more per month, predicted less frequent intimate partner violence, IPV, by husbands. It found that husbands' marijuana use also predicted less frequent IPV perpetration by wives. Couples in which both spouses used cannabis frequently reported the least frequent IPV perpetration of all. The relationship between marijuana use and reduced partner violence was most evident among women who did not have histories of prior antisocial behavior. This study recruited couples who applied for marriage licenses in New York State between 1996 and 1999, and researchers then followed up for the next 9 years with mail-in surveys asking about each couple's marijuana use and its effect on IPV. Lead author Philip H. Smith, Ph.D., is a recent doctoral graduate of the University of Buffalo School of Public Health and Health Professions, and he's now an associate research scientist in the Department of Psychiatry at Yale University. This study is based on research data collected by lead investigator Kenneth Leonard, Ph.D., director of the University of Buffalo Research Institute on Addictions. It was supported by a grant from the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism to Leonard, and another grant to Smith from the National Institute on Drug Abuse, the NIDA. While the NIDA has traditionally funded only anti-marijuana studies, that is, studies which seek harms, not benefits of cannabis use, what probably happened here is that the NIDA was betting they'd get some sort of correlation between marijuana and domestic violence, when in fact the numbers then show the opposite effect. These findings suggest that marijuana use is predictive of lower levels of aggression towards one's partner in the following year, Leonard said. As in other survey studies of marijuana and partner violence, our study examines patterns of marijuana use and the occurrence of violence within a year period. It does not examine whether using marijuana on a given day reduces the likelihood of violence at that time. It is possible, for example, that similar to a drinking partnership, couples who use marijuana together may share similar values in social circles, and it is this similarity that is responsible for reducing the likelihood of conflict, Leonard said. Although this study supports the perspective that marijuana does not increase and may decrease aggressive conflict, we would like to see research replicating these findings and research examining day-to-day marijuana and alcohol use and the likelihood to IPV on the same day before drawing stronger conclusions. According to Leonard, the most frequent use reported by couples in this particular study was once a week. Also in the United States this week, we learned that medical marijuana states have fewer painkiller overdoses. States which have legalized medical marijuana for chronic pain have significantly fewer overdose deaths from prescription painkillers, according to this new study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, Internal Medicine. Scientists looked at medicinal cannabis laws and death certificate data in all 50 states between 1999 and 2010. During that period, 13 states had medical marijuana laws in place. We found there was about a 25% lower rate of prescription painkiller overdose deaths on average after implementation of a medical marijuana law, said lead study author Dr. Marcus Bachhuber. In 2010 alone, marijuana saved 1,700 lives in states which permit its medicinal use, based on the number of overdose deaths that would have been expected before such laws were passed, according to this study. It can be challenging for people to control chronic pain, so I think the more options we have, the better. Bachhuber, who has treated many chronic pain patients as a primary care doctor at Philadelphia Veterans Affairs Medical Center, said. But I think it's important, of course, to weigh the risks and benefits of medical marijuana. According to the study, the number of patients in the United States with chronic pain who get prescriptions for opioid analgesics, including painkillers like oxycodone, hydrocodone, morphine, and methadone, has nearly doubled over the past decade. Overdose rates have risen dramatically over that same period. Deaths from drug overdose have risen steadily over the past 2 decades, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and have become the leading cause of injury death in the United States. In 2011, 55% of drug overdose deaths were linked to prescriptions. 75% of those involved opioid analgesics. Prescription drug abuse and deaths due to overdose have emerged as national public health crises, said Colleen Berry. She's a senior author on this study, an associate professor at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. As our awareness of the addiction and overdose risks grows, individuals with chronic pain and their medical providers may be opting to treat pain entirely or in part with medical marijuana, according to Berry. Dr. Lynn Webster, a past president of the American Academy of Pain Medicine, said he's not surprised by this study's results or that cannabis might be a safer alternative to opioids. AAPM believes that we need to do research on cannabinoids to determine its safety and efficacy, Dr. Webster said. The AAPM believes that the DEA should reschedule cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2 so that it will make it easier for research to be conducted, he said. We found that medical marijuana laws might provide unexpected benefits to public health, Bachhuber said. As more states pass these laws, it will be important to continue collecting information to see if what we found may be happening in other states as well. In Florida this week, we learned that the medical marijuana initiative that will be on November's ballot would also end the bong ban. Marijuana advocates might have an extra reason to celebrate if Florida voters approve a proposed constitutional amendment which would legalize cannabis for medicinal use in the Sunshine State. Passage of Amendment 2 would also preempt Florida's bong ban, which forbids the sale of pipes or paraphernalia used to smoke pot. And this is according to the head of the organization which backs Amendment 2. Amendment 2's definition of marijuana's medical use includes related supplies, points out Ben Pilar, campaign manager for United for Care. Anything currently outlawed is drug paraphernalia in Florida, including metal, wooden, acrylic, glass, stone, plastic, or ceramic pipes, may be legally sold if used to smoke cannabis to treat medical conditions, according to Pilar. That would even include 2-liter type soda bottles, which Florida lawmakers somehow found it necessary to ban when used with a controlled substance. The former University of Florida Levin College of Law dean who drafted the language for Amendment 2 didn't disagree with Pilar's interpretation, but said it will probably be sorted out in the courts. Pragmatically, though, I expect the legislature will go back and further define what is and what is not illegal paraphernalia, said John Mills, who also served as Speaker of the Florida House in 1987 and 88. But certainly, he said, if you were arrested for having drug paraphernalia and were using marijuana medically, you'd make the argument your device was included in Amendment 2's definition of related supplies. Former Florida State University president and law school dean and past American Bar Association president Sandy DeLomberti also agreed. If devices that best administer medical marijuana are on the list of drug paraphernalia, then on the face of it, it sounds like you would have a pretty good argument you weren't breaking the law, he said. Ultimately, of course, a court would have to decide. Florida lawmakers were quite obsessive about making sure nobody had any quote-unquote paraphernalia when they wrote this bong ban law. They didn't just outlaw roach clips, for instance, they defined them. Quote, objects used to hold burning material, such as a cannabis cigarette, that has become too small or too short to be held in the hand. Benighted Sunshine State legislators even made balloons and duct tape illegal if used as drug paraphernalia. They really did that. Last year, they cracked down on bongs. Florida law had previously allowed some retailers to sell bongs if at least 75% of their sales came from tobacco products, wink, wink, or if they had no more than 25% of certain drug paraphernalia sales. A bill offered by former crack cocaine addict Representative Darrell Rousson, a Democrat from St. Petersburg, made the sale of all marijuana pipes a first-degree misdemeanor. Second and subsequent violations become a third-degree felony. The lone exception created by Rousson is for what he called a grandpa's pipe, made from briar, meerschaum, clay, or corncob. Whack job Republican Governor Rick Scott signed the bong ban bill, HB 49, into law, and it took effect in July 2013. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement reports that only 10 people were charged under the bong ban over the past year. Moving to Nevada this week, medical marijuana patients want pot DUI tests to be performance-based. Critics of Nevada's laws on driving under the influence of marijuana want the legislature to change the test from one which detects cannabis to one which measures performance. A state legislative panel on Thursday agreed with a 9-3 vote that a bill draft request be modeled after California's law and submitted for the 2015 session. In California, police must first determine with a field sobriety test that you might be impaired, then request a blood test if they think you are. If marijuana is found in a person's system in California, the prosecution must prove that the person in question was too impaired on cannabis to drive safely. State Senator Toke, a Democrat from Las Vegas, who chairs the Advisory Committee of the Administration of Justice's Subcommittee on the Medical Use of Marijuana, said if a bill draft isn't submitted by the committee, he will probably propose it himself. Segerblom authored the 2013 law formally legalizing medical marijuana dispensaries in Nevada. If it's good enough for 40 million people, it is probably good enough for us, Segerblom said of California's marijuana DUI law. There is no scientific correlation between the amount of marijuana metabolites in one system and impairment, according to Paul Armentano, Deputy Director of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Armentano told the panel that patients can become tolerant to the effects of THC over time compared to novice users of marijuana. This, of course, raises the question of why NORML supported unscientific per se DUI limits in Washington as part of limited legalization measure I-502 in 2012, even while decrying those same limits in other states. Don't expect a quick or a clear answer from NORML on that one. Cannabinoids' absorption patterns and effects on performance vary widely from person to person, raising concerns that imposed limits are unlikely to be consistently applicable to individual subjects, Armentano said. Only if he had been that concerned about patients in Washington state. If the bill is adopted by the 2015 Nevada legislature and signed by the governor, DUI marijuana would no longer be based solely on how much THC is in the driver's system. Nevada is currently one of half a dozen states that tries to measure whether drivers are under the influence of cannabis, something scientists and state lawmakers say can't be done, with even the federal government expressing doubts in that regard. With the exception of alcohol, toxicology cannot produce per se proof of drug impairment, according to a report published by the U.S. Department of Transportation and cited by Armentano. Alcohol's threshold for behavioral impairment, unlike that of marijuana, is well established at 0.08%. But marijuana's threshold, assuming such a thing even exists, given the wide differences between individual users, is still widely debated. Nevada is one of 6 states that have DUI marijuana laws based solely on detection, 11 others have zero tolerance laws, and 33 states have performance-based laws, leaving the burden on the cops to prove a driver was impaired. In Uruguay this week, citizens can now register to grow their own marijuana at home. Uruguayans who want to grow their own cannabis are able to register with the government to legally do so now, as of Wednesday, when the government there launched the latest phase of its cannabis legalization program. Under a law that went into effect in May, citizens or legal residents who are 18 or older can grow marijuana for personal use if they register. The limit is 6 female plants with an annual harvest of up to 480 grams. Only 10 people had registered with the government by midday on Wednesday to become private marijuana growers. 3 of them were in the capital city of Montevideo, and 7 were in Uruguay's interior, according to the newly created Institute for the Regulation and Control of Cannabis. Marijuana activist Juan Vaz said he registered and the process was easy, but added that he can understand why some people might be a little reluctant. There are some people who might feel persecuted, Vaz said. For many years, they grew plants in secret, and it's hard to break from that way of thinking. Uruguay is the first country in the modern world to fully legalize the production, sale, and distribution of cannabis. The law passed by Uruguay's parliament in December 2013 also allows growers and users to form clubs and permits pharmacies to sell up to 40 grams of marijuana per month to registered users. No club has yet completed all the requirements to begin operations, but at least 4 have started the process, according to Uruguay government officials. President Jose Mujica said the sale of marijuana through pharmacies will be delayed until next year. Uruguay's presidential and parliamentary candidates are scheduled to run for office in October, and the major opposition candidates have vowed to repeal marijuana legalization if they gain the presidency or a parliamentary majority. The leading opposition candidate, Luis Lacalle Pou, said he would repeal the sale of marijuana at pharmacies, but would continue to allow the option to grow it at home for personal use. In the nation's capital this week, Hemp Industries Association is planning to present their 21st annual conference, which will be September 21st and 22nd. It will be held Sunday and Monday on the 21st and 22nd at the Phoenix Park Hotel in Washington, D.C. Business leaders and farmers in the hemp industry in North America and from abroad will meet during this 2-day event to discuss strategies and plans to legalize industrial hemp and return hemp to the American agrarian landscape once again. The conference will include speakers, hemp exhibits and sales, luncheon, silent auction, networking dinner, presentations, panel discussions, and updates on industry developments and expanding markets for hemp speakers. Speakers from the hemp industry and movement will be present at the conference, including Doug Fine, the author of the book Hemp Bound, John Rulak, president of Nutiva, Steve Allen, featured speaker and author of Building with Hemp, and others, including the marketing director of Dr. Bronner's Magic Soaps, Christina Bolghesi, and other leaders in the hemp industry. This 21st conference occurs at a significant moment in hemp history as the first legal hemp harvest in the United States in decades will be taking place in Colorado, Kentucky, and Vermont this fall. Exceeding $581 million in 2013 annual sales, according to Spins market data and HIA estimates, hemp is among the fastest growing categories for food and consumer products in the United States. In the United States this week, marijuana industry is creating job opportunities. It's one of the few bright spots in today's economic forecast, as a matter of fact, and that's according to the president of Cannabis Jobs website, 420careers.com. The marijuana industry is one of the few industries in the United States that is creating huge quantities of job opportunities, said Dan Kingston, president and co-founder of 420careers.com. Hundreds, if not thousands, of marijuana-related jobs will be created in Washington state and other states that legalize marijuana for medical and/or recreational use. Businesses are in need of qualified and law-abiding employees to work in the industry, Kingston said. The marijuana industry is expected to grow by 68% this year to $2.57 billion and could grow to $10.2 billion over the next 5 years, according to the New York Post. And according to Kingston, 420careers.com provides a free place for job seekers to browse and apply for marijuana industry jobs, as well as a free place where marijuana-related businesses can post available jobs and/or browse job seekers' resumes for qualified personnel. You can check that out at 420careers.com. Finally this week, we have a must-read story at tokesignals.com. As we touched on earlier in this newscast, Amendment 2 in Florida would legalize the medicinal use of marijuana in Florida. Now we have California activist and media personality Cheryl Schumann joining the Florida medical marijuana fight, but federal medical marijuana patient Irvin Rosenfeld in Florida is saying no thanks to Schumann's help. Now, why would Irv say that? Irv never speaks ill of anyone in the industry that I've seen, and he has been around for more than 30 years. If you want to find out why Irvin Rosenfeld says, quote, Florida does not need Cheryl Schumann to come into this state, you definitely want to check this story out at tokesignals.com. It's entitled, Schumann Joining Florida Medical Marijuana Fight. Rosenfeld says no thanks. Just a reminder Toke Signals is going to be taking a 2-week hiatus from Toke TV and Toke Radio. We'll be returning on Friday, September 19th. Stay lifted. See you then.